Hi, JJ here again with The Art of Value. Today I'm going to talk about legendary value investor Li Lu and how he's been buying more Google shares, more Alphabet shares in the last filing that we can see, the 13F, that's in the US. He buys internationally too, but we can see that he's been buying more Google shares in that last quarter. Maybe we can discover why he's doing that and maybe some of the positives and some of the risks in him doing that at this time. So let's get into it. So who is Li Lu? He's not really famous outside value investing circles. Value investors would probably know who he is. He's the only investor that Charlie Munger has trusted to invest his own money. And he went to Columbia Business School and he's had high praise from some of the best investors of all time. Here's a little bit of a profile on Li Lu, some background. This is from the website GuruFocus, which is a financial service that I use. I'm going to put a referral link in the description if you want to do that. We both benefit somewhat from if you use that link, if you end up using that service. So the profile says, born and raised in China, Li Lu attended Columbia University where he received 3 degrees simultaneously. And I think he's one of the only people to ever have done that, which is pretty amazing. 3 degrees simultaneously. And he founded Himalaya Capital, a $1 billion investment firm that primarily focuses on long-term investment opportunities in Asia and the US. So I think that's one of the reasons that Charlie Munger invests with him, because he grew up in China, but he also has lived in the US, is educated in the US, so he knows both these two largest economies very well. Li Lu currently serves as a member of the Board of Trustees of Columbia University and a member of the Board of Trustees of California Institute of Technology, that's Caltech. He is also a member of the Committee of 100, the Council of Foreign Relations, and the Aspen Institute. So it goes on. So he's very highly respected, well regarded as an investor and as a human being. He's got a very interesting background. Before that, he was involved in the student protest in China back in the 80s, in the Tiananmen Square protest, and that he ended up being a refugee, a migrant to the US, and then went to Columbia Business School after that and got interested in Warren Buffett's teachings. So a bit about his investment philosophy, again from GuruFocus. It says, Li Lu's firm embraces the value investment principles of Ben Graham, Warren Buffett, and Charlie Munger. It primarily focuses on publicly traded companies in Asia, with an emphasis on China. The firm aims to achieve superior returns by being long-term owners of high-quality companies and a substantial economic moat, great growth potential, and are run by trustworthy people. So these are the things that Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett like too. I've seen them say in an interview before that he was kind of humbled by the fact that he's got to know Charlie Munger, and Charlie Munger trusts him to invest his money. Early beginnings with Columbia Business School and refugee from China to be this investor with a multi-billion dollar investment fund. So let's take a look at Li Lu's investment portfolio. Well, this is the US part of it anyway. This is from the website Dataroma, which lists super investors, the activity and holdings of super investors. It's only the US investments, so we can only see here Li Lu's US investments. I've got another source that we can see another holding from China later, so stick around for that. But we have the top one that says 29%, nearly 30% of the portfolio is Micron Technology, then Bank of America Corp, Berkshire Hathaway B shares, Alphabet, GOOG ticker, and Alphabet again, GOOGL, and Apple. So that's 30% for Micron. Bank of America is 25%, so big holdings, but that's not, as I said, that's not all of his holdings. Google, both of the Googles is 14 and nearly 12%, so fairly substantial. And then we see the activity in the last quarter of 2022. He added 168% added to the holding. So that's the only activity that he had in that period. So that's pretty interesting that he loaded up on Google or added to Google at that time. So on the site, we can also see his buying and selling activity going back, well, years. And we can see that where he added to Google in that last quarter, and then he didn't do anything in the US in Q3, but in Q2, he added to Google again, upped it by 77%, and he bought GOOGL, that ticker, for the first time in Q2 2022, and he sold 100% of Meta. He had been loading up on Meta, and when the news came out about investing a lot in the metaverse, he decided to get out at that point. I guess he doesn't see a future for Meta, even though they're still making a lot of money. I guess he didn't like what was happening there, so he sold it. We can see from his activity that he did buy Meta in the quarters before that. In Q4 2021, he added to Meta and Bank of America and sold Pinduoduo, which I still own, and it's been doing pretty well for me actually. Interested one day to know why he sold. I kind of like what the company's doing, especially about getting into the US. So in Q3 2021, he bought Berkshire Hathaway for the first time. That's at a time when I think that Berkshire himself was buying back shares. So Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger obviously thought it was pretty cheap at that time, and they've been buying back throughout since then, really. So here we can see 2020, going back to 2020, we can see in the fourth quarter of 2020, he was buying Apple shares and buying Pinduoduo at that time, which he later sold. Remember, 2020 was that time, back in March 2020 was that kind of crash. Everybody thought the world was ending, the economy was crashing, and it didn't look good, but as we know what happened then, it kind of rocketed, or tech shares in particular rocketed as the lockdowns happened. It's been a crazy 3 years, really, hasn't it? But Q3 2020, he was loading up on Meta shares at that time, Meta Platforms, and Micron Technology, which is a stock that I own as well. He added 16%. There are a lot of value investors who own Micron, and I've made videos about that before. It's one of the most popular shares for value investors, really. In Q2 2020, he was buying Meta Platforms and Google again at that time. GOOG, the ticker, for the first time, and he sold 100% out of Alibaba. Again, an interesting move. And Charlie Munger bought after that, so they're kind of opposing views on that one. And Q1 2020, he was buying Micron, Bank of America, and Alibaba. So he started buying Google, it looks like, in Q2 2020, and he's been adding to them ever since, becoming quite big in his holdings and still adding to them. So at this point, it's probably a good time to look at the Alphabet stock graph. We can see going back to late 2021, it's been going down since then. So he's been buying as it's been going down. It's down nearly 25% in the last year. So he's been taking advantage of that and still taking advantage of that. For Alphabet to lose a quarter of its value, he's taking advantage of that. Question is will it be a good move for the long term, or will it not be? I've made some videos about what I see as the risks. Perhaps the biggest risk that Google's had for 2 decades, and that's ChatGPT coming out. So it'll be interesting to see if that in this last quarter in particular puts him off, or whether he thinks Google and say DeepMind is going to be able to keep pace. I wonder how much he knows about AI, and does he see that OpenAI and Microsoft's involvement as a threat to Google search? I've talked about that in other videos, and I'll put a link to that at the end of this video, because I personally think it could be a significant threat to Google's core business model. They could get into it, but will it cannibalize their own search advertising, which is, let's face it, nearly 80% of their revenue? Do they really want to cannibalize their own core business, which has been one of the best business models of all time? Google, I think, is one of the widest moats of a company ever in their search. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble and you're getting value out of this episode so far, do hit that like button to help spread it to more people, and give me that little dopamine hit that we all love so much when people like our stuff. Thanks. Here we have Li Lu's portfolio, Himalaya Capital, from Ticker Terminal. So this shows us a little bit more. It shows the ones that we've already mentioned from the US, but it actually shows Postal Savings Bank of China, which seems like Lu has a big stake. It says 31.69% of his portfolio. He may have other shares. I know that he's bought BYD, the electric car company and battery company in China. Berkshire Hathaway owns some of it as well. So I'm not sure if he still owns it or not. I haven't seen any evidence that he's sold shares in it, but I don't know. He possibly still owns it. He's talked about it in interviews. People have asked him about Tesla, and he said his money's on BYD as a better bet for electric cars and batteries. So I assume that he still owns it, but we just don't know. I don't know. Do you know? Let me know. And so Postal Savings Bank, which is interesting. I don't know anything about it, but he's taken a big stake. So the reported value of the shares is $894 million, which is significant. So he must like that a lot. It's interesting that he's picked mega caps and large caps. I don't know about Postal Savings Bank. I'll have to look at the market cap of that. But he has bought these huge US companies at this time when the market went down. It's interesting that he's not buying smaller cap. He does have a lot of money to invest. Maybe that's got something to do with it. He's always been a value investor looking for, well, deep value, yes, sometimes, but it's interesting that he's going for these large cap US stocks. He obviously thinks there's a lot to run in them, and it's a good time to buy. We saw that Google went down. A lot of the US tech shares have been down over the last year or two. So he's taken advantage of that. So what do you think of Li Lu buying Google, keeping on buying Google at this time? Do you think it's the kind of best buy that he can make as far as large caps or mega caps? What do you think of his moves here? Why do you think he might be doing it? And do you see a threat from AI, even though Google is involved in AI? Do you see a threat to their core business, their core search from things like ChatGPT? I'd be really interested to know. Let me know in the comments, or let me know on Twitter at The Art of Value. If you've got this far in the episode, if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble or Spotify or audio on your favorite podcast app, perhaps consider subscribing if you're not already, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching or listening.